public speaker, but I'm here for a presentation for you tonight. My family's been in the area as far as back as we can look in the archives, about 1740, and so a lot of information's been passed down through generations, and then plus I actively seek out historical information concerning the area. Get back to that. Okay, so here, these are Native American marbles that are in the Duck Creek Museum in Smyrna. So you can see that the people actually resided in the area for the children to have these. They didn't just there weren't just foraging parties in the area, and there are actually settlements, encampments where they thrived on. And actually, I'm going to get into those and what I plan to speak later.
Do you want to use units?
Yeah, I have notes, and I'm debating whether to do this just off the fly or to go to my notes.
Go for it, because you're doing good.
Okay.
Off the fly.
I'll just do this I'll do it on the fly, thank you. Absolutely. Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to do a little bit of, I'll need to do a little bit of both. I will.
You need more light.
No, we're good. All right, so we have many cultural concerns that Three Point Solar refuses to address. Last month, I had seen posted private property signs stating no trespassing. This really burned me up because of the network of roads that they intend to put through the heart of what I believe to be sacred Lenape ancestral burial grounds, which could potentially displace a few hundred undisturbed grave sites. So truthfully, it is Native American ancestral land more so than it is private property. These are artifacts, spears, arrows, skinning knives, all found within a mile or two north or south of this site. And they range from anywhere from just pre-colonial to late Descartes period, 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. So many tribes were very, very prevalent there for a long period of time. Those are the stone marbles and that children played with. So they actually resided in encampments there, weren't just foraging parties in the area. At this location, tribes came early, settled, thrived, and were buried. Further proof was discovered on the Bailey farm, where over 3,000 artifacts were found. So Bailey's property is here. And so the proposed, well, it's past, it's like this is what we're contesting. So this is the part, all in this red, that's what's being leased. And this area, all in here, is what's actually been sold to Three Point Solar. So you can see the geographic similarity here with the proximity to the Smyrna River and freshwater streams, and this is, you know, they have freshwater streams coming in through here, which is prime area to live off of. And so this has land coming right up to the river. Back hundreds of years ago, before they cut this for shipping, they cut this out straight. So this used to be solid field right up to the river line, where they could go from a canoe straight to solid ground. Just a perfect fishing, hunting environment.
Where's the Boondocks?
Okay, yes. So Boondocks restaurant is right here. So I know probably at least half of you would have an idea where the Boondocks Restaurant at. So this is all the property from the Boondocks Restaurant all the way to the Smyrna River. And they just,
Here is another question. So it's Smyrna River or Duck Creek, it's kind of complicated out there in the marshlands. But on one side is Kent County and the other side is Newcastle County, right?
right, that's right.
Point there is that.
Yeah, so this is Kent County, so the Smyrna River's here. So here's Newcastle County to the north side of the Smyrna River.
So Woodland Beach is where?
So
and where's the
Woodland
road?
Beach, we'll just go like this. You would go out and 3 miles southeast if you were to keep, traveling to the right upper corner of the screen. Then,
Yeah, just trying to, help everybody out.
So
Does
just-
everyone have their, are you all situated? Gentleman has a question.
Can you tell me what that road is that's arching at the bottom?
this road right here, that's Woodland Beach Road.
That's Route 6, right?
Yes, that's Route 6.
It's Woodland Beach Road.
Yep, Woodland Beach Road. Route 6 goes like 50 miles and changes names a half a dozen times depending on where you're at. So on the Bailey Farm here, very comparative land protrusion. In 1994, Route 1 wanted to go through this property, but were denied because it was Native American lands, and some of these artifacts were indeed burial artifacts in nature. Fortunately for the Lenape, on November 16, 1990, federal law was passed to deny the misdisposition of these artifacts, and the face of the surrounding ground was then and still is to remain intact. You can see, I already pointed, the geographic similarities found on, this is on the Geological Survey of 1868. This was Lebanon Plantation. It had that name from at least 1790 onward. So that's what I refer to this area as Lebanon Plantation. So one thing I'll say about this, I'm being active looking for artifacts. The old timers in the area, they told me that the Native Americans wanted to be buried in the area that sustained their living. That way, in the afterlife, it would continue to sustain their living. The closest, the most practical area to do that is these islands of land in the marsh, immediately adjacent to the Smyrna River, which also known as Duck Creek, because the river was their lifeline that sustained their living. So to be buried here, they were in immediate proximity to that. So if you go just 20 miles south, you again see more similarities with Island Field. Back up.
Yep, 2. Same one you were on right there.
Oh, it's on the, okay.
It's on.
There you go.
So here you see the islands, the land in the marsh with
Miss
Million River,
I'm sorry, Murder Kill.
Murder kill,
Murder
yeah.
Kill Road, thank you. And so in the 60s, there was an archaeological survey there. Actually, 127 Native American remains were found. There is, and you look at the geographic similarity here, similar to Bailey's property, and the same with Lebanon Plantation. There's no doubt in my mind that there's Native American burial sites in that area. And so being the case, it should not be disturbed. So the legal issues for the Lenape are getting an archaeological survey necessary to preserve this land according to the 1990 federal law requirements of a federal component of funding. However, this company is professionally and illegally covering its financial tracks. City of Dover has funded Freepoint, and likely they got money from the state, which likely got funds from the federal government. To establish this, some Freedom of Information Act requests need to be made in regards to that federal funding. So please feel free to make these requests. After everything abusive government has done to the Native Americans over the centuries, poison, smallpox blankets, outright slaughter, Trail of Tears, Wounded Knee. After everything the government has done to them, they again intend to commit further atrocities against this Native American culture. But the Lapte tribal members and our community are not going to accept this injustice. Please join us in our efforts. Another injustice we are concerned about is that of other roads they also plan to use that will end up cutting through reported slave burial site. Our concerns for the African American culture are very plausible because archives show us that Lebanon Plantation had at least 5 slaves and 5 freedmen of color working this plantation from 1790 until the end of the Civil War. So now I'll show you a graveyard and how it can be obscured over a period of 2 centuries. So here are marble stones. You can see how much they had sunk in the ground. They were probably originally a good 1.5 to 2 foot in height, and that was like 1.5 inches above the ground. Here, these probably are. This is the same, as you can see, the same graveyard. This isn't Little Creek. The Quakers have hired me. I contracted with the Quakers to mow this grave site. There are about 4 rows of graves along here, and so at that time, these Quakers, by low income, couldn't afford the marble gravestones, and so the African Americans, the plantation owners, weren't going to spend a lot of money on marble gravestones to really mark the plot good. So there's probably 40, 50 field stones in this area. I found one of them, and I tried to find one to take for the picture, and I couldn't find it from middle of summer at the time I found it mowing in there. So that they've sunk in the ground and have overgrowth over, obviously, obscuring the gravestone. In an archaeological survey, you can find all the gravestones in this yard. So back to the plantation. So generationally, however, the slave burial slate has been passed down to Sherry Foster, who had been residing there for decades, and her family as well before her, which makes sense because at that time, whites did not allow slaves to be buried in town, and it was common practice for their burials to be on the plantations that they worked. Such was the case at the John Dickinson plantation and many other areas all around here. In 1987, state law was created called the Graves Protection Act, which states it is the responsibility of those displacing earth to conduct a survey in a site like this that has a high probability of there being burial grounds. Back in January, Kent County conveniently overlooked this in their urgency to rubber stamp their solar project. Now, these people So that these people, these slaves I've been referring to, they are human beings. They may have endured horrific conditions crossing the Atlantic, which typically killed 1 in 5 slaves, and once here had to endure the hardships of bondage. They did so hoping that one day someone like Frederick Douglass and later Martin Luther King would correct the many injustices imposed upon African Americans. We must do the right thing here and conduct this survey, because failure to do so would be a disgrace to their selfless legacy and threatens the preservation of those heroes' gains concerning civil rights movements.
Do we go back up? Up to.
So here's a picture of a beautiful 1684 Lebanon plantation home. Facing the Smyrna River, Freepoint intends to tear this down because if left standing as a historical landmark, they would not be permitted to place solar arrays upon the immediate acreage. I believe it is the oldest home still facing the Smyrna River and likely within the top 99.9% of oldest homes in the state, and is thus historical enough to be preserved. Yet they want to tear it down before anyone says anything about it. But this is an important part of our country's colonial heritage, and we cannot allow this to happen. So these are artifacts I've found in the area, which they coincide with plantation type setting and some War of 1812 activity in the area. To the best of my knowledge, this is a sheet to a Scottish dirt, which would have been made between 1740 and 1760, and so it's about a 9-inch blade that's like a dagger would have been sheathed in that, and that's something that would have been standard for someone in the Revolution or the War of 1812 to be wielding. Here's a snake button, 4th Infantry Division. The snake represents the "Don't Tread on Me" snake that you see that's on the yellow flags. Here's a War 1812. It's an Eagle Infantry button. Here is a dandy button. It is a Masonic button, which that would be very anti. Thank you. That would be very anti. If you're part of the Freemasons, you were not a friend of the British Empire. So here are 45 caliber musket balls. That, from what I've read, after 4 or 5 volleys of shot, even with the Brown Vest, which is a 69 caliber musket, there would be so much residue built up in the barrel that they had to resort to a smaller 45 caliber size musket balls to where they wouldn't get stuck in the barrel, which is obviously, I'm a soldier, I can tell you wouldn't want that and you know, so I'm a veteran. You wouldn't want that in combat. So, and further, that validates that there was something of a significant clash of at least 4 volleys fired before these bullets were used in battle. War 1812, buttons here. These are all buckles, which they might have been on horses or shoe buckles, all dating late 17, early 1800s. So during the War of 1812, 300 Royal Marines landed at the end of Lighthouse Road, the road that this plantation is on. Their intent primarily to pillage and raid, although possibly establish a foothold by building a fort if a lack of resistance so allowed. However, and much like today, the whole community came together to resist these invaders. This militia, consisting of about 160 men, primarily farmers who were more accustomed to wielding a pitchfork and a sickle than engaging an enemy in combat. Somehow, they managed to stop the Royal Marines from penetrating very far inland, which is nothing short of a miracle from God. Today, facing similar invaders who are trying to raid our farming community, we again will pull together to repulse these new types of invaders. Please join our coalition as we hold on to what is most precious: our God-given lands, our freedoms, our way of life, and our cultural justice.